Yeah, that sounds a good plan.
Perfect. So
sounds good to me.
Shall we just do some introductions then? So I'll introduce myself, and then I'll let you both introduce yourselves, just for the sake of the recording, so everyone knows who we all are.
Yeah.
So my name's Dina Hardy. I'm a consultant colorectal surgeon in Manchester Foundation Trust in the northwest of England, and I am currently an honorary postdoctoral researcher at the University of Leeds in the process of applying for an NIHR Advanced Fellowship. Adele, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I'm Adele Nightingale, and I'm an operating department practitioner, and I'm principal educator at Northern Care Alliance, also in the Northwest. And I've just finished my doctorate in early on this year, and I'm now in that postdoctorate phase, wondering where I go next.
Brilliant.
Hello, everybody, and I'm Pete Thompson. I'm Director of Programs and Impact at the NIHR Academy. So that's the part of NIHR which looks after our various research training programs and fellowships and other career development opportunities, which includes a mentorship program, but I can talk about that during the course of this discussion.
Great. So I think we were just talking about, actually just touched upon mentors that we may or may not have had, and Adele was telling us her experience. So go on, Adele, I will go back to you about that.
Yeah, so I didn't have a mentor, a named mentor, during my doctorate, which I don't know whether impacted on me as a person, on my development, my journey. And I suppose being a healthcare professional, so being a non-medical researcher, I think the interpretation of the word mentor has got lost somewhere in nursing and other allied health professions. And it very much was used around pre-registration programs and teaching and assessing. And I think sometimes we've got to undo that work and that word and then change the narrative of what it actually means in research. So for me, I think that's really important is knowing and understanding, first of all, what a mentor is, how you would use a mentor, what that mentor-mentee relationship should look like, and what the support is there to develop the skills and behaviours of a good mentor and mentee relationship.
And I wonder, Adele, I mean, you're probably right. So as clinicians, we're a bit more au fait with mentorship and what mentorship means, and we tend to have a whole host of mentors, and we perhaps don't always realize that some of the time that is an unofficial relationship that you sort of access, where you go to somebody for a bit of advice or a bit of direction, or you want to share an experience with. Did you have any unofficial mentors, or would you have considered yourself to have had unofficial mentors?
Yeah.
Because that's slightly different, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So I suppose I think I described them in my thesis as my critical friends. So they were people that I went to bounce ideas around with, people I went to when I was having a bit of a pity party, when I thought I can't carry on doing this and I needed a bit of support. So they were, and I suppose I described them as critical friends, and they were those people that would challenge me as well. So when I thought I was right about everything, they were the people that would pose the questions and maybe challenge me a little bit as well, but in a supportive way. So yes, I think I had mentorship, that unofficial mentorship, and found people that I knew would push me a little bit and would challenge me.
And I think that's the case for a lot of I think probably all healthcare professionals and all academics, is that there is probably a underlying unofficial mentorship relationship that exists to some degree. And perhaps, as you say, we don't really understand what mentorship is, or we don't crystallize what mentorship looks like and what a mentorship relationship looks like. So before I come to Peter, I have a second question for you that I think I'm quite interested in. Have your mentors all been nursing and ODP, or have your mentors been a bit more broader than that?
No, so it's fun. In the operating department practitioner profession, what you can have is people who are solely operating department practitioners, or you can have people who are nurses and operating department practitioners. And so I had a mixture of both, because it was, whilst my research was focused on operating department practitioners, what I needed was that other perspective from a nursing background. What I didn't have was I had other people from other professions. So non-registered, so people not registered with the HCPC or the NMC. So I had a couple of homeopaths, I had midwives. So I did have other people that are bouncing ideas around, but not the wider perioperative team really. And the reason for that is when I was doing my research, when I'd done my data collection and things that I wanted to bounce ideas around, we were in the middle of a pandemic and it didn't quite feel appropriate. So would I do things differently? Yes, I probably would.
Okay. I think it's quite interesting that often we go to people that we have similar characteristics to, or that are in similar professions to us, or that align to our research ideals and priorities. So certainly as a surgeon, and when I was a surgical trainee, I had a lot of surgical mentors. But then when I started my PhD, I had a lot of academic mentors, and I've sort of maintained those relationships. But those relationships only happened because I was in those two spheres, and they are very much either doctors or professors of, clinical trials or things like that. I haven't really created a broader mentorship network that exists beyond those two groups, to include nursing staff or ODPs or other arenas. What I've started doing as I've got a bit older is that I've started to have reverse mentoring relationships. So I have junior colleagues that I sort of like to bounce ideas off because I want to stay young and relevant, but also, and a lot of peer-to-peer relationships that have developed over time. But that has all developed organically. There are lots of obviously mentorship schemes which sometimes are perceived to be a bit inorganic because they're almost matched or not matched. So Peter, I'm going to ask you to come in now, because obviously the NIHR have just launched their big mentorship program. What's its ethos? What are its principles? What is it hoping to do?
Brilliant. Yeah. No, certainly I can talk about what we're doing here with NIHR. So yeah, we launched this. It's only last year, the year before, so relatively recently. So for those of you who might be aware, there was we did used to work in partnership with the Academy of Medical Sciences, because they also have a mentorship program, and it was something which we paid into, but we took the decision to broaden out and start our own program, because one of the things we did really want to do was actually increase the number of people who could access it. So the Academy of Medical Sciences was a great mentorship program, but it was quite specific to clinicians, whereas NIHR funds quite a wide range of different people, and we wanted to make sure there was something available to anyone who's a member of the Academy, so i.e. anyone who's got funding on one of our various research training awards. I mean, in many ways, it's relatively simple in terms of what it's trying to do. It's a program there which people can make use of if they wish. I mean, there's no sort of obligation as someone who's got funding from NIHR to say you should have access to this. Plenty of people get mentorship in lots of different ways and don't have necessarily the need for a formal program. This is very much there to say, actually, if you do want to get access to mentorship, and we do encourage people to look at that, because there's so many benefits that we've seen for people from having probably what we call more career mentorship. So it might not be mentorship necessarily related to your research, but more around where you're looking to develop your career and the difficulties you might be facing on where to go next in your research career and all that sort of thing. So that more that sort of that side of things. But so yeah, we think there's lots of benefits there. But if you want to get access to a mentor and you don't currently have one, so the scheme is very much there to support people to match up. And it may be that you get matched with a mentor and you meet a few times and actually you think, no, this maybe isn't for you. That's fine. I think there's something we say right at the beginning. There's no obligation sort of to keep this going. If it's got to feel right, I think, for both parties to be worth pursuing with. And there's plenty who, once they have got a mentor, that it will last for years and years. But others who actually maybe it's not quite right, and that's absolutely fine. No one should feel bad if that's the case.
And I suppose I would like to know a bit about how you match the mentors and the mentees, because often, as we've sort of alluded to, that relationship gets created quite organically. So how does NIHR, how is NIHR matching the mentors and mentees? Are you using any metrics to do that, or is it just depending on what your area of interest is or where you are in your career stage?
We do use a tool, and I must admit I don't work with it too closely, so I don't know the details of the tool ins and outs. But it is essentially around sort of the mentors describing, where they're from in terms of their research interests, professional background, etc. There might be certain things that they might particularly want to highlight. For example, one of the areas we've tried to promote recently is people who've got experience of collaborating with industry, and if you're looking to get some mentorship around how you may start that and how that might work, you can see that on the profile of the mentor. So actually that person has got that experience, so actually that's someone I'd quite like to go connect with. So it is essentially based around you giving what are your research interests, where are you in your career stage, and then having basically a look through as to, okay, here's the different people you might be able to link up with from a mentorship point of view. Most apologies, it's getting quite loud in the background, so if you need me to mute, then please tell me to.
No, it's fine. And is that currently only accessible to people who've got NIHR funding?
It is, yes. It's open, and it's only open to postdoctoral and above at the moment. So, yes, if you're funded on one of our PhD programs, you don't get access to that particular program. But we tend to find that a lot of people who are doing pre-PhD or PhD programs have access to things locally. There's still plenty of people at postdoc level who get access to things locally, but I think our feeling is that the postdoc stage is such a critical stage in people's research career. You've done your PhD, and you're now really trying to establish yourself as your own independent researcher, which is, there's lots of potential pitfalls along that stage. So I think we felt, where would having a mentorship program be the most beneficial? We felt it was the postdoc stage where we'd probably add the most benefit. So that's why we're very much focused there. So it's not to say that it's not a useful program to have across the board. One thing I will also mention is, as well as the NIHR program, in my talk earlier, I was talking about the Integrated Clinical Academic Program, which we run jointly with Health Education England. So Health Education England also run a mentorship program, which runs alongside the Integrated Clinical Academic Programs. This is the program for non-medical clinical academics, so nurses, midwives, AHPs, healthcare scientists, pharmacists, etc. That program is actually open to doctoral and postdoctoral. So that one looks slightly different, but it's still trying to do the same sort of thing. It's matching up career mentors for people who are looking to make use of them.
Great, thank you for that overview and insight into the NIHR program. I suppose my question to you both is that some of those systems, although are available and programs are available, they're quite inaccessible, because actually getting NIHR postdoctoral funding is quite difficult. Competition ratios are quite high. It's very competitive. So how do we encourage people to take up programs that have been successful in those particular arenas? And B, what do we do about all of those other researchers in the field of surgical tech that weren't on the NIHR pathway? So, I certainly didn't come through NIHR training. I did my PhD, then I continued doing some postdoctoral work, and now I'm at a point where I think I'm ready for an advanced fellowship. But how do we cater for those, that are outside of the NIHR fold in the greater sphere of the surgical tech landscape? Adele, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I suppose from my point of view, I'm just thinking at the moment that this is something that needs to be embedded from the outset, and it's not something that somebody gets to a certain stage in the career, whether that's a higher banding or a more senior position. And I think we need to make research and these terms that we use in and these access to these fundings, I think we need to have an awareness of those from the outset. So whether we embed, I'm talking from a non-medical, but whether we embed those in pre-registration programs, whether we look at those through preceptorship, whether there's a research thread from the very outset of people coming into healthcare, or especially into the perioperative environment. what does research look like to those people at band 5, band 6, band 7, band 8, and what does that research journey look like? Because I think very much it seems to be everybody else's business, but those people in those less senior posts, the more junior posts. So I think we need to make some of the terminology and the language that we're using and the things that we talk about, I think we need to get them embedded early on in people's academic or surgical careers, rather than wait till they're in a certain position. I think we need to influence from the bottom up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Peter, what do you think? How does is there any way of making some of the NIHR schemes a bit more accessible?
I mean, part of it comes down to capacity in terms of what we can provide. So, you say our sort of initial focus very much is on the postdoc level in terms of where we felt we could add the most value. I mean, I would say things like the incubators has been a way of us being able to sort of provide something in addition. So there's quite a few of the different incubators. I think Martin gave a brief overview of them earlier on today, but where they've mentorship has come up as something as being a need, and the mentorship, the incubator itself has put something on locally for that particular cohort. So there is that mechanism where we can try and provide something in addition where we see that there's obviously a need for it. I mean, I do agree having something early on makes lots of sense. I mean, lots of sort of, this is more anecdotal, but lots of things we hear from people who have got mentors prior to applying, and the help that they've given tends to be actually that a lot of them sort of, they do, as you were describing, Dina, go quite organically. You know, they might meet someone at a meeting or a conference and just go and approach someone and say, actually, I've saw you present today, would you, could we follow up afterwards? And that seems to be the way that a lot of people actually get access to mentors. People are very open and keen to support the next generation coming through, we find. So I think that will be one sort of encouragement, I suppose, if you are looking for a mentor, is actually just, don't be afraid to go and ask someone, because I think you'll get a positive response in the vast majority of cases. So if you think, actually, I'd really like to go and work with whoever it is, just go and have a chat. And I think the other again, this is a bit more informal, but some of the other things that are around is, again, Dina, you mentioned peer mentorship, and that there has been a few examples growing up recently around peer-to-peer mentorship networks. For example, our pre-doctoral group of fellows have sort of took it upon themselves to actually all link in together and sort of provide a peer-to-peer network, which has been a great example to see. So we're always very keen to try and facilitate people doing that type of activity where we can. So it may not be through the sort of the formal mentorship program, but if there is a way that we can help connect people, because obviously we know who everybody is in that sense, then we're very happy to try and do that and provide support where we can, because I think the benefits of it are well known. And the feedback we have from anyone who's got mentorship, whether it's through the scheme or whether it's elsewhere, is always, actually, this has always been really beneficial. So would encourage anyone to try and get a mentor if you haven't already got one, whichever way you end up going about it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that obviously I'm part of the Advanced Surgical Tech Incubator, and I'm actually leading their mentorship scheme for them. And what we're hoping to do is create something that's quite organic and agile, rather than create a matching system based on experience or career stage or interest. What we want to try and do is tease out, and we're going to try and pilot this, but tease out what are your skills and what are your skills needs, and how do we then encourage you to develop your own mentoring relationships and your own network? Because ultimately the future leaders of surgical tech research have to develop a network and have to be able to sustain that network and have to be able to grow that network so that they can deliver their own research and academic portfolios. But we need to be able to empower the younger researchers and the new researchers coming through, whether they're nursing, allied healthcare professionals or surgeons, of how to develop and create those networks, and how to develop the skills that allow you to be able to go up to somebody at a conference and say, hi, my name's Dina, I really admire your work, please can I come and work with you, or I saw this, or would you help me with that? And we're trying to do that in a really lean and agile way. So it will be open. We're hoping by the end of the year for people to enroll into a pilot, and we're really hoping that what we want to do is create a mentoring relationship that isn't a silo, because that's the other thing, of course, that you can create a siloed network of people that all align to your own skill set. What you want to do is create a really broad group that will then add to your skill set. Adele, do you want to come in on commenting on that?
Yeah, no, and I think what you're saying is absolutely right. And just to kind of talk about the challenges sometimes as a non-medic in that environment is, I've spoken to a surgeon and an anaesthetist, not from the Greater Manchester area, just about my research, because they were both doing various different things about human factors, non-technical skills, all those things that you need in surgical technology. And I wanted to talk to them about my research and wondered whether we could do any collaborations. And they've both got PhDs. And whilst they started the conversation, they didn't really want to engage. And I don't know whether that was with me or with my research, but I was trying to be inclusive to say, look, can we get together? Because what you're talking about in terms of the surgical side of things, especially within robotics, where, like we mentioned earlier, it's about how we communicate with each other. It's about those human factors. It's about recognizing those behaviors. It is about finding those people that will, it's like you're finding your key allies, really, isn't it? And not everybody will want to be those allies. So sometimes you've got to learn how to take the knocks as well as how to embrace those people that are there. And I think when you find those few people, it's like, yes, this is it. So I think it's important to collaborate, and it's important to recognize that not everybody will want to collaborate together, but it's about finding the key people.
Yeah, and I think the surgical tech landscape is really difficult because there's a lot of IP, there's a lot of navigating other arenas rather than just, research and research protocols and research processes. There's all this new technology that you have to understand how the funding landscape works, because, when you're developing a new piece of kit, you may not necessarily go to an academic institution. You might go to a venture capitalist to get some money put in, and then you want to know how you do your B series funding and how you then go on and launch your product, and what does surgical innovation mean is slightly different to the assessment of that innovation. And I'm only just getting into that landscape, and I think the mentorship group has to be way more broad than just a clinician. It has to be speaking to a venture capitalist to say, well, this is what we're looking for when we're looking to invest in people, and this is what we're looking for at this stage is when we would say go for your B series funding, and at this stage would say, okay, you need to think about your academic collaborations to assess your innovation. So I think we have to think much more, broadly, that grassroots mentorship, it definitely has to be grassroots, but it has to be very broad grassroots. And I think that although schemes like NIHR are very, very important, they very much place the emphasis on the academic side of things, don't they? And whether we need to think about how in surgical tech that might change. I don't know if you want to come in on that, Peter.
Yeah, no, completely agree, actually. I mean, that as I mentioned earlier around us trying to at least highlight things like work collaboration with industry as an area of experience that you might want to pick up on through the formal program. But that came from a discussion we were having through our annual conference a couple of years back, where people who were looking to form new collaborations with industry weren't really quite sure where to start, and they actually said we could do with some mentorship around this. And how do I go and talk to have someone who's maybe industry based who would be a good mentor? They may not necessarily be an academic, but they'll know sort of, say, the medtech world inside out, and it's that kind of person that you might need to get access to. So no, I completely agree. We are trying to sort of broaden out a little bit who is a mentor. I mean, we need to try and attract people in to officially join the scheme as well, if you know what I mean. So we have our mentor pool, which we'd say we'd like to broaden out in that respect. But I agree. I think having a broad range of people is important, and certainly I think you said it, Adele, before, in terms of a broad range of professions. So again, I think that's really key. Just because you may be a physio doesn't mean your mentorship team should be a team of physios. It could be clinicians, it could be non-clinicians, different methodologies. As it could be academics. People who aren't academics altogether. I think there's definitely think in the broader sense, I would say.
And so I think we've got about 10 minutes left, and I'm sure we could all keep going talking about this for a very long time. But let's think about, what do you think the challenges and the solutions are for mentorship in sort of med tech or surgical tech? You know, what can we do differently to address some of the issues we've discussed? Adele, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I think from a non-medical perspective, I think it's really understanding what NIHR do, what that's there for, what does research look like within clinical practice for people who are, because it's written in every single person's job description. However, very, very few people actually engage. And I think it's about connecting people, whether that's through mentorship, actually connecting people to contribute to other people's research, just to get dipping the toe in the water and supporting them. So not everybody's going to qualify, work, and then become an independent researcher. And it might be that we encourage more people through mentorship to work with very early careers of dipping the toe in the water and putting, the first kind of stab at research. I did a couple of research projects with other people before I did my doctorate. And again, for me, it's that real understanding of what a mentor is, what a mentee is, what that relationship looks like. How do we educate people to be mentors? Do they need some education? And I'm sure those packages are already there, but if they're not being tapped into because we don't know about them, then that's probably where some work needs to start.
Okay. And Peter, what are your thoughts about the solutions, the challenges, the innovation that we could bring to mentorship in surgical tech?
I think you're right to do in terms of mentor training. I think the thing I was going to say around that was sort of the capacity too. And I know I said before in terms of, just go and speak to someone at a conference, and you usually people may hopefully get a good response to that, and often do. But I think the sort of counter to that is obviously people's capacity, and I think not everyone has unlimited amounts of time to mentor everybody who necessarily comes to them. So I suppose that is the sort of thing to think about. How do we sort of help give additional capacity for mentorship, but without sort of overburdening people, because especially if it's the more junior people, you might actually be looking to work with some of the the postdoc community who we're also providing sort of this mentorship program for. So I think that is quite a challenge in terms of how we do that. I mean, there may be slightly different models. It may not be that at the sort of early stage, at the pre-doc stage, the same sort of model is what you would need when you get to the postdoc end. So I think, again, Adele, you mentioned around things like internships and sort of early tasters of research. Maybe that's up, which we do have a few different schemes in that space. And actually, it's an area that NIHR is looking to potentially do more in at the early stage to get people interested in research. So it's probably, it will be something we'll want to think about. Okay, with those sort of schemes, how would we sort of wrap in what you might need around mentorship into them to sort of make it part of that, so it's not necessarily having to have a separate scheme for pre-doctoral people around mentorship, but it's, if you're working on an internship, can we make sure that gives you everything that you might need at that stage in terms of mentorship and support to get to the next stage, if that makes sense. Just to make it a bit more, I suppose streamlined, really, just thinking about the capacity issue.
Yeah, and I think that you raise a valid point around accessible mentors, but supporting mentors, but also making sure that you choose the right mentors. Just because somebody is a world leading figure in X, Y, or Z, often A means that they're quite inaccessible, and B, they're quite busy, and that they're in demand, and perhaps that's not always the right person for mentorship at a certain stage. So I think, and certainly the Advanced Surgical Incubator is looking at agility in your mentorship model, and how your mentorship needs change, but how you understand that your mentorship needs change, and how to address that sort of changing face of mentorship and mentor-mentee relationships. We've got a comment from the floor about, could mentors help with regulations, ethical approval, and/or IPs? And when you mention about PhD researchers, does that include researchers from biomedical engineering backgrounds? I think in surgical tech and in med tech, actually you have to have and like we've already alluded to, it has to be mentorship for all, you know, involved in that sphere and that arena. And it has to be collaboration between all in that sphere and arena, because ultimately we need everybody's individual skills, expertise to try and get the best for the best outcomes, the best innovation, the best outcomes for the patients. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Adele and Peter.
Yeah, I mean, just from my experience, you mentioned there ethical approval, and I must say, navigating the IRAS system for me was the point where I could have gone, do you know what, if it's this hard to do, I just won't bother. So I would have really benefited, and that's where I benefited from what I called critical friends, in terms of me going, oh my God, this is so difficult, this is this, and them saying, yes, but actually just write it in your own flow chart, break it down into small steps. So I think that for me, the question there about will they help with ethical approval, I think sometimes having somebody to guide you through the IRAS process and things like that is supportive, and I would have really benefited from that help from a mentor when I was doing my doctorate.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and I guess that, you know, it's what you get from your people like your supervisors as well. I mean, there's probably quite a grey area or overlap between what support you might get from a supervisor, which may tend to be more along the sort of more technical, and it might include things like ethical approval regulations, versus a mentor, which may be more sort of, as you say, around not issues around your career development, etc. But certainly, I don't think no one's going to sort of not to provide help and assistance where they can and point you in the right direction. I think that's the, you know, what you want from your package of support that you've got around you, however they're badged, you know, whether it's supervisor, whether it's mentor, whether it's someone else, whether it's critical friends. I think that's probably the important thing is to have that sort of wide network of support around you, and how you want to sort of badge those different people. Maybe in some ways it doesn't matter too much, but it's as long as you've got the sort of the right network around you, really.
And I suppose it goes back to Adele's very initial point that actually we need to understand what mentorship means and what mentorship involves. And I think that for me personally, mentorship means oversight, doesn't it? Oversight of my personal and my professional development. And you then have a whole host of other people, supervisors, peers, research assistants, fellows, who help with those day-to-day aspects of developing your research portfolio or developing your tech portfolio. But your mentorship group provides you something slightly different. But it goes back to understanding exactly what your needs are and when those needs are relevant, and who might be appropriate to help you deliver, you know, to address those needs, which goes back to having this agile platform, I suppose. Just got a minute or so. So if there are any questions or any comments from the floor, then, you know, feel free to share your screen or add in something into the chat. Otherwise, I'll just ask Adele and Peter for their final comments. You know, one sort of line on what you think the future for surgical tech mentorship is. Oh, I think you're.
One of us had to do it today. I think from my perspective, it's a lot like we've already described. It is around having that multi-professional approach to mentorship, and that's not just within kind of theatres, perioperative. That is that wider network of people that can help and support bring some of these research projects to life.
Yeah, I'd agree. I probably echo that very much. It's you can get a lot of benefits out of having a wide mentorship and support network. So I would definitely encourage people to, however you go about doing it, think about what your support network looks like. Is the gaps, is the additional people you need to get on board, and NIHR is always here to happy and help to try and help you do that if you are struggling. But definitely encourage people to go and get a mentor.
Wonderful. And I think we've got an attendee that's joined us, Amy Bradburn. Now, Amy, I think if we're right, you're from Newcastle, and we may well have done a case together when I was a trainee.
Yeah. Hello.
How can we help you? What's your question?
Oh, do you know what? I've just finished the session in supervision, and I thought I'll quickly nip over and see if I can take any valuable points from your session. So sorry to be jumping in at the end. met Adele yesterday, who is my role model and ODP, and having, coming to the end of your professional doctorate, like, well done. So I know it's possible, and I won't give up, because I want to do a research project surrounding like robotic assisted surgery, and have been interested in like 2 years. It's just finding the mentorship, supervision, and actually practically how to do it. So I'm hoping like some take-home points from all the roundtable discussions will be useful, not just for me, but everyone attending today.
Well, I think the first step is just participating in things like this, and it's sort of opening your mind to the opportunities that are available through like, Surgical Tech Career Launchpad and the incubator, because they're always a great place of connecting different people. And then I think the other thing to say to you, Amy, and what has come out through some of our discussions, is actually approach anybody and everybody, and it doesn't matter whether they're a surgeon, a nurse, an ODP, a midwife, industry rep. Capitalize on all of those relationships, create a broad and dynamic and diverse network, and work out what your mentorship needs are, what your supervisory needs are, and go and try and get those. And we were saying that we're going to launch the Advanced Surgical Incubator Mentorship pilot at the end of the year. You're more than welcome to join that, and we'll try and match you based on your skills set, based on your needs, and based on your aspirations. And there are other schemes through the NIHR and more widely that are available. But I think the first step is just to communicate and reach out. I don't know if Adele and Peter want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Amy and I have met this week, and we've had some really kind of valuable and meaningful conversations. And I think from my perspective, it's, my role now is to encourage and support and develop other people, as well as getting involved in my own postdoctoral needs as well. But it is about actually bringing supporting people like Amy, and that's what I feel that I'm here for, whether that's official mentorship or whether that's unofficial mentorship. But actually, we're all in this together, and I think most people that you approach, will support you. But I'll definitely be there for you throughout your journey as well.
Just to add to that, I completely agree in terms of speaking to people, getting in touch. We would be more than happy to, the team here at NIHR, to have a sort of conversation over what schemes might be sort of best to you in terms of the career stage you're at, and what we can do around the support there. So if you do want to get in touch with the office, I think my contact details were on the slides from earlier, so the team would be more than happy to have a conversation with you.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to ask us whilst you've got our full attention, Amy?
I'm sure I'll have plenty of questions later. There's a lot of valuable information that I just need to contemplate and then think, right, and then, like you say, explore these different platforms and think, okay, where do I go?
Brilliant. I think we're going to come to a close, but we've got Mohammed that's joined us. So Mohammed, is there anything you'd like to ask or contribute to the session? No? Okay. Well, in that case, I think it's been an absolute joy and delight to have a sort of half an hour conversation with this.
Hello, hi. I just joined in. I'm driving, so just trying to listen to the conversation.
Okay, great. And did you want to? I hope you're on your hands free and you're driving safely. Are you? Did you want to ask either of us any questions regarding mentorship?
I just joined in, so what type of mentorship? Is it like more a research or?
So I'm going to mute you, Mohammed, just because of the noise. So the mentorship is for anybody that's interested in any aspect of surgical tech, from idea, innovation to evaluation. And what we've been just having is a very round, broad discussion around mentorship in this space. So we're just about to wrap up, and we're going to, if you head over to the stage, you'll then get an overview of all the discussions. So all the chairs for each session over the last half an hour will provide an overview. So it'll be worth doing that. And I'm sure this will be recorded, so you'll be able to get access to it at a later stage at your convenience. But thank you for joining us. And again, I'd like to thank Adele and Peter. It's been a really delightful, insightful conversation. It's always great to understand what everybody's needs are, but also how we all speak from the same hymn sheet, really. And ultimately, we all just want to together collaborate and develop the next generation. So I think that's really exciting. So thank you all so much, and thank you, Amy, for joining us, and Mohammed. And I will head over to the stage, and hopefully you'll get a flavour of what's been discussed in the other sessions.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tina.
Thanks, Tina. Yeah. Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.